The opinions expressed on this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Cable 14, its sponsors, or its shareholders, Cogeco Cable, Shaw Cable, and Source Cable Limited.
Welcome to another episode of Our City. I'm your host, Martinus Geleynse, and we're in our second episode of a show that focuses on the ideas, issues, experiences of Hamiltonians. We talk about what's happening in the city in politics. We talk about business, arts, and culture. There's a lot going on in the city of Hamilton, so there's obviously a lot to talk about, which brings us to our first guest today. Annette Paiement joins me from the Art Gallery of Hamilton World Film Festival. She's the festival director there, and the festival is in full swing at the moment, isn't it, Annette? So tell us, how's it going so far?
So far, it's been absolutely incredible, Martinus. We've just had incredible response from audiences across Hamilton and outside of Hamilton. Most of our screenings have been sold-out shows, which is really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the week and how great things are going to be. Excellent,
because we're headed into, this is the big week of the festival, right? It started this past week and now we had the weekend, so you're a few days in, and we're all gearing towards Cinema Hamilton night, which closes the festival off.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about what people can expect this week? What are the films that you're showing? What can we look forward to?
Oh my goodness, we just have such a slew of films. Tonight we're showing,
You've got a lot going on. No problem. Don't worry. You have so many films you're showing. I think it's 20.
You just caught me. We have Cosmopolis coming up this week, Inescapable, and we have live from the Divi's Flats, Urbanized. There's just a whole bunch of films, and all of those films are listed on our website at aghfilmfest.com.
Great. And now that's 29 films in total, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's been a very long weekend, so
I'm sure you're probably tired right now. That's okay. We appreciate you being with us.
You stumped me there.
Well, there's a lot going on, and so you mentioned Urbanized. Now that's a show that's a film rather that's being presented by the Hamilton Burlington Society of Architects, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I'm pretty excited by that whole section of film. So we've got an architectural block. It's architectural and design block, and Urbanized is part of that block of screenings. Urbanized is a really interesting film by Gary Husvack, and it's part of a trilogy of films that he's created. The first film being Helvetica, and I believe we showed that in Hamilton a few years ago out at the Staircase Theatre. The second film was Objectified, and it's about how objects are made. And this film is about urban renewal, which is a pretty hot topic these days in Hamilton.
It is indeed, and in fact, this is a bit of an architecture-heavy show. We're talking about Urbanized right now. Our next segment, we're talking with Lesia Mokrycke, and she's the one who did the mural on the side of the McCollum Sather Architects building. And then our final segment, we're talking about design review committees. So there's a lot of architecture, and it's exciting that we're talking about that because there's a lot of that, as you said, urban renewal happening in Hamilton at the moment. So now, speaking specifically about the Insight Awards, the Cinema Hamilton Insight Awards, what are those?
Okay, Cinema Hamilton Insight Awards is an award show. As you know, Martinus, all of the directors of all of the independent film festivals have come together to put together the Cinema Hamilton Insight Awards. And through committee discussions throughout the year, we have determined that anyone who had submitted films in any of the other four festivals were entitled to submit their film to be considered for an award. And that's the Hamilton Music and Film Festival, the Hamilton Film Festival, Hamilton 24, and Indie Option Film Festival. So we've had quite a number of submissions that have come forward, and a number of those submissions were also placed in the category for Audience Choice Award. And we've been screening some of those films here on Cable 14, as well as showcasing them on the Cinema Hamilton Insight Awards Facebook page and YouTube. People can go to the Facebook page and vote for their favorite film, and then we'll tally up those votes to obtain the winning submission for the audience choice. Now, we've held juries over the past couple of weeks for all the other categories. There's 8 categories in total, and we will be naming who the winners are at the awards ceremony on Sunday night. In the process of the committee coming together, the Insight Foundation for the Arts came forward, and they loved the idea. They loved the idea that we were supporting independent film in Hamilton. They loved that the awards would go towards helping filmmakers develop their craft and just sort of raise the profile to filmmakers in Hamilton altogether. And you know, Hamilton has become one of the hotbeds for film production. And what most people don't know is that we do have a really great group of filmmakers here in the city. And as more and more, as the city grows and film becomes more and more part of the city, it was really important for us to support the industry's growth from a homegrown way.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here is essentially the beginning of Hamilton's own Oscars, kind of, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And I understand the program includes a red carpet at 6:30 on September 30, and then the show begins at 7:30, and that's all at Theatre Aquarius, and tickets are only $10, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, which is fairly inexpensive, I think. The evening will also be catered by Naroma Pizza. They've come forward as a sponsor for the event, as well as the Beaumont girls. They'll be helping to host the event. And I can't forget, it's very important to mention that you know, the Hamilton Film Office, or ECDEV, has come forward as a sponsor to this event as well. So there's, you know, great city support. The foundation has supported it, and you know, all of the community supporters of film have come forward as part of this committee.
So let's hope that it is indeed a fantastic success. Annette, thank you so much for joining us today. I encourage all of you Hamiltonians to indeed check out the information on the slate that's going to be coming on the screen right now, and head on out to the Cinema Hamilton Insight Awards, and be sure to check out the rest of the AGH World Film Festival as it takes place this week. Welcome back to Our City. I'm your host, Martinus Geleynse. We're on location right now on James Street North, right across from History and Heritage, right near Cannon Street, in a studio owned and operated by Lesia Mokrycke. So I'm here with Lesia, and she's preparing her installation for Scotiabank's Nuit Blanche in Toronto this coming weekend. So Lesia, tell us what we're looking at here.
This is a piece about sound and space in the city, and it's composed of a series of drawings that begin very quietly and slowly build until they climax and then come back down to quietness once again.
So I see a lot of panels around us here, large pieces of paper. They're paper, right? They are paper, okay. So now what exactly did you color on them with, or what's on them?
So all of the images are done with Conte and charcoal, and I tried to keep the material very simple, just so that it calls to mind like a sense of writing and the way that we process written language through materials.
Okay, so now when this is actually set up, are the panels going to be, there's obviously a sequence to this?
Yeah, they start very quietly with only 1 or 2 images, and then slowly build throughout the course of the piece. And there's some language interwoven with the images, and it rises and falls with the images as the piece develops.
Now, it's quite a large piece, because we're in your studio here, and it's absolutely surrounding us. There are all kinds of panels. So how big of a room do you need to actually install this?
The piece is going to be installed at the Bathshey Museum in Toronto, and it is 25 by 25 with 10-foot ceilings, I believe, and there are 2 spaces. So it's quite a big space.
So this, what we're looking at with these white panels, this is one component of it, right? Now there's also a second component to it. Can you explain that one to us a little bit?
Sure, yeah, there are 2 components, two spaces. So the first space is composed around the day, or like conceptions of what the day means. And the second space is composed around the night. So the top space is white, and the bottom space is totally black. And I suppose I could elaborate on that more. The top space is paper, and the bottom space is fabric and a video. So there's a nice contrast between the different kinds of materials in each space, like upstairs being more traditional but large scale, and downstairs being more contemporary but yet a different scale, smaller scale.
So what is it then that you're trying to say, if you could put it in one sentence, and that may be impossible, but if you can put it in one sentence, what is it that you're trying to say to the people who participate in this exhibit?
I think that the most important thing is for us to think more carefully, or just carefully in general, about the way that we occupy space in the city and the way that we, as inhabitants of urban spaces, really co-create the environments that we live in.
Now, this is not your first foray into exploring space and how we interact with space in an urban setting, because you are the artist responsible for the mural on the side of the McCollum Sather building on just off of Cannon Street, right? Can you explain how that piece perhaps led to what you're doing right now?
Sure. That piece occurred in 2007, and it was a bit of a surprise. Greg asked me to do the piece, and I had never done a mural, and certainly not anything on that scale before. But I felt really good about it, so I decided to say yes and to move forward with it. And it turned out great. And I think that the best part of that process was the interaction with the public and the way that people would come up to me midway through the process and become part of the piece through their conversation. So that piece was really about the way that images on a large scale can transform the way we think about space and the way that communities are affected by the actual physical objects in spaces. And I think from that piece, throughout the past 5 years, I've really explored the way that we can think about space in the city in a three-dimensional way, like taking things off the wall and moving them into actual space.
Now, the people that you're working with on this project bring some different abilities to it as well, because there's the audio component, there's the actual assembly of the electronics, and there's the visual art here that's around us. Can you tell us just briefly a little bit about your partners in this?
Yeah, absolutely. I usually do work with people on my projects. The mural had 2 girls on it that were assistants. They were there for the first 2 weeks, but they were painters, so this is really new. The 2 people who are working on this piece are Bryn Gingrich, he's an engineer, and Kenny Kuziak, a sound designer from New York City, and Bryn is located in Toronto. So both of them are bringing a lot to the piece and totally different skill sets, and I think together it's been a really amazing experience to work with them and to learn more about what they do and what their processes are and how those processes relate to visual processes and visual culture. It's been great. It's been amazing.
That's great. Now, if people want to see your exhibit at Nuit Blanche, where should they be going?
They should go to Bloor Street. The piece is at the Batashoe Museum, 327 Bloor Street West in Toronto. Nuit Blanche opens at 7:30 and it goes all night until 7 a.m. So there's ample time to come any time throughout the night.
Great, and I think we have a slate on the screen right now showing the details of that. And if people want to find out a little bit more about Lesia Mokrycke as an artist here in Hamilton, where do you find you?
You can find me at my studio. I'm here most days throughout the week. The address is 170 James Street North, Hamilton, Ontario. So it's right at the corner of Cannon and James Street North.
Great, thanks so much for your time, Lesia.
You're welcome, thank you.
Welcome back to Our City. We're here with 2 very special guests, one of them all the way from England actually today, Julia Greer, and we have David Premi of David Premi Architects. So welcome to Our City.
Thanks,
David,
Martinus.
I wanted to throw it directly to you because we just came out of a segment with Lesia Mokrycke, and she's preparing an installation for Nuit Blanche in Toronto this coming weekend. But I understand, based on our conversation in the green room earlier, that the Ontario Society of Architects is also involved?
Yes, that's right. For the first time ever, the Ontario Association of Architects is an official exhibitor at Nuit Blanche and has put out a call to members, and I think there's 25 or 27 architects of which I'm lucky enough to have been chosen as one, our firm, and have done segments on the future of architecture, and this will be all put together into one multimedia installation and is going to be shown at the Design Exchange for the night of Nuit Blanche.
So will you be there in person, or is it just your bust floating in midair?
It'll be a virtual bust of me floating in midair along with all of the other exhibitors. It sounds really, really interesting, and there's going to be a large 20-foot wide media wall, a video wall, with images and things to go along with the statements that the architects are making.
Well, congratulations on being involved in that. It's great to have
Thank
another
you.
Hamilton representative as a part of that event. Now, the reason we've called you here to the studio today, both of you, is to ask a question about design review committees or design review panels. This is an idea that was floated over the last few months in Urbanicity. There's been a bit of chatter about it, but if I can throw to you, Julie, what exactly is a design review panel?
Well, a design review panel is a group of experts, professional experts, that are brought together, managed, if you like, by the city to advise on major developments. And that's to a set of criteria that's defined by the city. They might get together for once a month and review schemes, offer their expert advice. They'll look at things like the external appearance of the building, the internal arrangements. They can look at things like sustainability, how the building meets the street, and its contextual response, whether that contextual response is appropriate. They also look at master plans as well. So it's really whatever the city defines and asks them to do.
And David, how does this compare? Obviously, there's a dramatic comparison, but how does this compare with the current process of construction and design review in Hamilton?
Well, in Hamilton, we don't have a design review committee. Julie's very familiar with design review committees in England, obviously, and has been instrumental in setting a number of them up. They're very, very common there, as they are in the rest of continental Europe. Recently, there have been panels established in places like Toronto, Vaughan, Mississauga. London has a pilot project underway, London, Ontario. But we don't have anything of the kind here. Right now, it's the traditional site plan approval process where an application will go in and be examined by staff and circulated amongst departments. But I think part of the issue that happens there is that you get staff members that may become overwhelmed with the enormity of what they're trying to review. Whereas if you have a room full of experts who are working in the field, who can offer expert advice and really give clear direction, it makes it easier for staff. And it helps, I think, what I've heard in other municipalities, and Julie may want to confirm this, it helps to streamline and make the whole process more predictable. And it helps to yield much better results from an urban standpoint and helps a community direct its vision in a clear way.
So Julie, can you speak to that? What has been your experience with design review committees in England?
Well, in England, I had some 10 years experience doing, reviewing schemes, if you like. And then I found myself as head of design at London Borough of Southwark, which was really going through enormous change. And one of the first developments I had to deal with was the Shard by Renzo Piano, tallest building in Europe. With the London Bridge Station interchange, a really complex scheme. And it's schemes like that that officers, even though they're skilled, it's really out of their comfort zone. And it was as a result of all these schemes that was coming forward to the London Borough of Southwark that I decided that Southwark needed its own panel. We had a national panel at the time called CABE. But CABE kept telling me that, they weren't Southwark's design review panel. We were asking them to do too much. So on the back of that, really, I set up my own panel and in Southwark, and that was London's first. Since then, most local authorities that make up Greater London have their own panel. I also then left there and went on to the Olympics. and the Olympics had their own panel. And even though there was a really tight deadline and strong political will to see this happen and to see it quickly, because obviously the deadline date couldn't be shifted, it had a panel, and that panel was instrumental in making those buildings beautiful, but also really questioning their legacy, their role in legacy, because we didn't want to be left with any white elephants. So I think there's a wide scope for panels to help, and I think the benefits are considerable.
So this sounds like something that that Hamilton should have, to me. David, what would it take for Hamilton to implement something of this nature?
Well, the good news is that Hamilton is implementing a pilot project currently, or studying a pilot project. After you had published an article that I wrote, Martinus, in Urbanicity, I had calls from a couple of councillors who were very interested in it, presented it to the Emergency Services Committee, and it was unanimously voted to defer it to staff to study the implementation of a design review panel in Hamilton. And that staff report is due the end of this year. So we're looking forward keenly to what the recommendations are, and hopefully we can move it forward from there.
So there's a very real possibility that this may indeed be realized in Hamilton. How popular are design review committees? Are we behind the eight ball on this, or it sounds, Julia, in Europe that this is quite common?
Yeah, I think it's quite common. Britain has a national panel, and that's a sort of reformation of the old setup called CABE. It's now they've joined the Design Council. And they've co-opted some 250 what they call built environment experts to help them, and they go right across the nation in terms of helping local authorities develop their policy, look at master plans and so on, and they'll help where there isn't a local panel. We also have regional panels. Each region within Britain has, well, in England has a panel, and in terms of local panels are really just getting off the ground. As I say, most in London have one, and they're starting then to filter out. But in other cases, local authorities are joining together. There might be 2 or 3 local authorities that join together who are a little bit quieter in terms of development, and they'll join forces and set up a panel. I think one of the benefits is that you have locally based experts, and they know the area. They have a passion for the area, a real interest, and they can, in our case in Suddock, they would get on their bicycles and go and have a look at the site, and that adds real benefit because they can add, they can really support the developer and the design team.
And as you mentioned, those are not necessarily even just architects. So in the context of Hamilton, this may be architects, engineers,
planners.
Absolutely, artists. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both. We're out of time, unfortunately, but thank you both so much for coming on the show. David from downtown, and Julie from London, England. So thank you again for joining us this week on Our City. I'm your host, Martinus Geleynse, and I look forward to seeing you next time, perhaps downtown, perhaps on air.